Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I hope you guys are multitasking listening to us right now because of all the chaos and storms going on in the Chicagoland area. If you are tuning in with us from the Chicagoland area, please be safe. But we are here on All-Star break. Lost some crew members, and that is largely due to the weather right now. Myself, I am in the city, so I, for the time being, hashtag crack 'em, appear to be out of the storm for the time being. Obviously, Tyler joining us here from the great state of Kentucky. Juice Nick could be joining us again before the show is over this evening, assuming the weather kind of persists in a positive direction. Obviously, tornado warnings going on right now. If you are tuning in with us and watching us live on YouTube or X or Facebook or wherever you're tuning in with us, again, please be safe. Seek shelter if you are in the line of these storms, because these things are nasty. But Tyler, we got some baseball. How are you, my friend? First off, happy All-Star break.
Happy All-Star break to you as well, Ron. I'm good, man. I'm good. I love this time of year. I'm telling you, tonight is the best night as far as All-Star stuff and all sports. And not only that, Ron, it is my 34th year on this planet today.
That is right. Happy birthday, sir. Happy birthday.
34 years ago, I crawled out of the womb, and here I am today. And real quick, look at this. My wife got me this for my birthday today. Check this out. It's my son.
I love that. That is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, look at us. We look just a lot. Yeah. But I'm good, man. I'm good. Hope you guys are weathering the storms. But yeah, we here at Cubs on Tap, we'll do it in the rain, man.
I feel that. I just had a warning come across my phone too. So if you guys see me peering over at the screen to my left, it is actively watching just what is going on to make sure all is good. Hopefully we will get our friends back here in just a little bit as the weather pushes through the area. But we'll be here for a while, I think, Tyler. We got a lot of things to talk about. This will probably be a little bit on the longer end of the show. I'm glad, first off, that you took the time out of your birthday to jump on the old mic with us and talk some good things, all Cubs baseball. Tyler, let's get into this thing. First, obviously, we're going to talk first half as a whole in this show here today. But most recently, 5-2 on this last road trip. Obviously, the doubleheader was a bit of a heartbreaker, largely against the Cardinals on Saturday. Those only two losses that they experienced over the course of this road trip. But the sweep in Baltimore, we were live as a podcast to talk about that one, and then the split with the Cardinals in the 4-game set. Again, 5-2 on the road trip. Tyler, the Cubs are hot at the right time, it feels like. They come steaming into the All-Star break right now. I mean, I think this last road trip has got Cubs fans feeling pretty good now all of a sudden about this team and how things are going.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'll be honest, when just before the road series, who'd they play just before the Orioles? What was the home series? It was the home series. I'm blank. Whoever it was.
It was the Angels. It was the
Angels. Okay. At the end of that Angels series, like we said here, we all were, everybody was thinking it. It's like these, I may have even tweeted it. These next two series, talking about the Orioles and the Cardinals, it's like it's win or go home mode. Like you had to have obviously finished over 500 on this road trip. And the fact that they swept the Orioles, the best team in the AL at the time, the record-wise, I get it. They're not doing so hot right now, but it still doesn't matter. They play in the big bad AL East. The Orioles are a legit team. I mean, if you're watching the Derby right now, there's several Orioles on the All-Star team. They're a good team. And they went out and swept them. That whole series was everything that series that Ron, me, myself, several other Cubs fans were just whining, crying, complaining about, yelling about, as far as like stuff not clicking, bullpen not working, offense not clicking, like everything. That series was everything you wanted and more. Yeah, it would have been nice to win at least one more of those games in the Cardinal series. I know me and you talked about it before the show about that Wes Nesky game. Uh, Definitely wishes he could have that first inning back. But I'm going to be honest, Ron. I would not have bet that this team would have gone 5-2 on that road trip. And yeah, like you said, it's got us all excited. It's got us, man, with being so close to the trade deadline. I know we'll get into it. It's really got everybody buzzing about what's this front office going to do. And yeah, right now it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice to be sitting 5-2 in your last 7 games.
Yeah, 5-2 in the last 7 certainly feels good. We got a hello and happy birthday here from T Solid to you, Mr. Edmonds. I agree with you, man. I think, if you would have told us before this road trip that this Cubs team was going to win 5 games, I would have told you you're crazy. I would have expected 3 of those, probably, maybe even all 4, or 4 of them to come against the Cardinals versus the Orioles, for them to sweep Baltimore in their own ballpark and then take care of business and at least get the split. You argue, obviously, they probably could have won 3 out of 4 of those
Yeah.
in
Oh, yeah,
St.
definitely.
Louis. And I think that's the hard part. Like Matthew said here a little bit ago, he says, get a closer. That second game was heartbreaking to lose by 1 run. So, I think at the end of the day, Cubs fans are probably got to be feeling pretty close, right? Like, or you got to feel pretty good about where things, especially without Cody Bellinger, and this team is still putting up runs on the board
Yeah.
at a pretty consistent clip. If you would have told us, I like what Matthew had to say here. Happ would have been an all-star a month ago. He would have been. I think, this team's getting hot at the right time. And despite a lack of all-star representation, obviously showed the only Cubs all-star representative. We'll touch on that here in just a few minutes. But, man, we'll talk about a way to roll into this all-star break. 2 bombs out of Morel on Sunday, 2 bombs out of Pete Crow Armstrong on Sunday. I think two names that we probably wouldn't have guessed were hitting bombs. Seiya Suzuki got a homer in this Cardinals series. They were clicking. They were clicking offensively. Dansby Swanson seems to have awakened a little bit. Nico Horner is on a hit streak. Things are looking good right now for this offense. And I think the most impressive part, Tyler, about everything, and I think it really came to a kind of a point in this series, is that the bullpen in the last 2 weeks has been like the 3rd best in baseball. And since like June 1st has been like the 6th best in baseball. Like,
seriously?
Bullpen, yeah. From an ERA standpoint,
I didn't know that.
they have really started to dial it in here lately, and we've seen a lot of that now kind of help the Cubs as this offense especially has gotten going coming into the month of July. And a large part of that right now being covered, guys like Ian Happ and Michael Busch being incredibly consistent. And then you have some of these other guys, being able to factor in, right, the Dansby Swansons of the world, the Seiya Suzukis, guys like that. Pete Crow contributing offensively on Sunday was massive, especially given the absence of a guy like Cody Bellinger. So you love to see it, man. And you know what? I know this show is we got a lot of things to talk about. So the 5-2 is cool, but we were talking about it a little bit in the pre-show. We did have Juice on in the pre-show. We're going to have 3 of us for sure. Juice jumped off because of the weather going on right now and where he's at in relation to it. I really think, like you said, Tyler, the next 10 games in 11 days, once play resumes on Friday with the Diamondbacks at Wrigley Field, that's going to determine whether they're buyers or sellers. And I know John Heyman was on
the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think John Heyman, is kind of right in some ways in what he said on 670 The Score. He believes the Cubs should be buyers. He says, you're a huge market. You have a huge payroll. You should be buyers. You should go for it. You should give yourself a chance. Your team's not horrendous to the point where you're like, oh, yeah, we're for sure sellers. They're not the White Sox. They're not the Marlins. They're not the Colorado Rockies, who know they are for sure punting when it's all said and done. When it really comes down to it, it is going to be, hey, it's just, I think it's really going to come down to, Tyler, how aggressively they buy. And I know that we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but huge stretch coming up afterwards, and we'll preview that first leg of that at the very tail end of this show. But Tyler, let's keep this thing pushing. The 5-2 road trip. but Shota is an all-star. We saw the picture today. Some incredible comments and replies about it. His picture with Shohei Ohtani. I believe it was Obvious Shirts. I think it was Joe over there at Obvious Shirts saying, the greatest Japanese player in MLB and Shohei Ohtani in a picture
awesome.
together.
Yeah.
But Shota is loving it. He's repping it great. So I'm talking to guys like Bryce Harper and others here at the All-Star festivities. I mean, good for Shota being able to represent the Cubs this year in the All-Star game. A rookie to Major League Baseball, not a rookie to the sport by any stretch of imagination. But he has come and just taken the sport by storm here in the United States. And, he's had some struggles lately, but great last start prior to the All-Star break, lowering his ERA underneath that sub-3 mark. He's been really, really good, Tyler, and good for him to be able to enjoy this and take it all in when it's all said and done.
Oh, for sure. I mean, because you can ask the question, and we've said it before on here, like, where would this team be right now without Shota? You could argue that without Shota, especially during that stretch without Justin Steele, and there was a small little, maybe almost a month that there was a stretch that first month of the season, there was no Justin Steele, there was no Jameson Taillon. Yeah, I know. Before he debuted this season, you wasn't sure what Jameson was getting. So, like, it was basically Shota and then Assad, it was nice to have Assad doing what he was doing, but, like, where would this team be right now if Shota wasn't performing the way he was performing? Like, you could argue that they're, which right now, what are they, 3.5 games back from the wild card? You could argue that this team, like, could be almost, I don't know, 8 games back in the wild card. And so then we're not even sitting here having this conversation about, oh man, this team could be buyers by the deadline, because by the time, like, Steele came back and Jameson comes back, we could be sitting here having the conversation of, okay, guys like Steele, I hate to say it, but guys like Steele, Jameson, what can we ship off for those guys? What can we get for those guys and stuff like that? We'd be having a totally different conversation right now if Shota wasn't doing what he's been doing. I know his past month has been, he's kind of been brought back down a little bit, because let's be honest, we all know we'd go to games and look, and you'd see that ERA hovering around 1, and it's like, okay, I get it. Yeah, this isn't going to last forever. It's not going to be a 1 forever, but a nice, high 2 right around your 3 mark, like, that's awesome for a guy that, yeah, like you said, he's not a rookie in baseball terms. As major league terms, he is. And it's just awesome to see, man. And it's good to see that he's going to be put on the big stage, a national stage, global stage. Everybody else is going to see him, see his personality. And I hope he gets to go in, and I hope he gets an inning tomorrow. It'd be awesome.
It really would be awesome. And like Matthew said here, he's glad that they made sure that he couldn't pitch in this game. And I think there's expectation that he will get an inning when it's all said and done at the end of the day.
Right.
So it'll be cool to see. He gets probably 25 pitches. Not a big deal for him. I think he'll, be able to come out of the All-Star break. Cubs will be able to set the rotation pretty much any way they want. Coming out of this break when it's said and done. Don't know what those pitching, groups are going to look like. I'm willing to bet some money that he's going to pitch probably one of those first 2 games against the Diamondbacks. Oh, yeah. Maybe there's a chance that a guy like Taillon does the same. I mean, he pitched really well against the Cardinals on Sunday in that 8-3 win. So, but good on Shota. Maybe Shota gets that 3rd game in the Diamondback series when it's all said and done. And all will be fine and dandy in the world. Matthew says here he's sure glad that they made sure he could pitch in the All-Star game. He does say, though, it's a shame that Skeens will probably get Rookie of the Year. We'll see.
You never know. You never know. I mean, it's nice to see what Paul Skeens is doing, even if he is with the Pirates, who happens to be in the same division. It's awesome for baseball to see that. I know a lot of people. I know this isn't a Pirates podcast or Pirates Paul Skeens podcast, but, like, you've got people that are maybe on the fence about Paul Skeens starting the All-Star game. Honestly, I think it's awesome. I think it's cool as hell. And to be honest, in my opinion, he's earned it. He's performed, like, above, I think, way above expectations. And yeah, why not? But as far as the Rookie of the Year thing, hey, You never know. You never know. His second half could be he could get hit up a little bit, and who knows? Maybe we see some epic second half from Shota. So you just never know.
Indeed, you never know. A lot can still happen. Tons and tons of baseball to be played when this thing is all said and done. Quick update for those that are watching along with us. The weather is getting ready again. Please be careful, be safe. Hopefully,
Ron,
everybody is.
are you
In
good
safe
over
spot.
there?
I'm great. I'm chilling. I
Okay.
am in a room with no windows, so
Okay.
we are doing a okay over here. We're just keeping an eye on things and watching the old weather as we persist on. But Tyler, speaking of that, let us persist on here with our discussion in terms of let's get into some of that first half talk, right? And
Okay.
we've got some of these fun questions here that we're going to get to in a second. But I want to hear from you, Tyler. What just kind of in a soliloquy of sorts, how would you describe the first half as a Cubs fan watching this team over the course of the last 3+ months?
Do I go back to the girl that you liked for a year? The analogy I said about the girl that you had the crush on, you had feelings for, and she was good to you for 1 week, and then she disappeared for the next week, and she was it's a roller coaster. It's been a roller coaster. This first half, we'll all say it. I mean, for the first, I think you could say the first, I think 75% of the first half of the season was us basically saying the same thing. It felt like forever, no offense, no bullpen. But with this last half, but at the same time, and I hate to say this because it was something I just couldn't stand at the beginning, in the middle of the first half was I felt like front offices was going to, take advantage of, well, this whole National League, you've got like 3 teams in the National League that are good and everybody else is it's just you throw them in a bucket, you throw them in a room, turn the lights off, shut the door, and you see who comes out. Is basically what it is. And that's what it is. That's what this National League for the most part is. So with that, with these last 7 games, it's kind of bumped my spirits up a little bit. And I'm kind of like you. I want to be like you, Ron, when you text me earlier today about we were talking about, guys that maybe they could sell off if they had to sell off. And you were like, hey, I'm looking into this. I'm trying to, in my head, we're buyers. We're buyers. We're buyers. I think with the way things ended and with these next 10 games, I feel like Jed, I feel like it's one of those plot graphs of if this happens, then we do this. If this happens, then we do this. And I think right now that's exactly what's going on as far as like if these next 10 games, I want to say, I believe Scott was saying it earlier, like if this team goes 7-3 in these next 10 games, this is what we're going to do. If this team goes 2-8 in these next 10 games, that's where we're at right now. And to be honest, I think it's something that you would have to do sooner than, by the end of the 10 games. But as far as the first half, boy, it's nice to know that the bullpen has gotten better in the past couple of weeks. That's something we've talked about all throughout the season and even last year as far as bullpens. I mean, they come and they go and they all can get hot at the right time. They can all get cold. All it takes, we've said it before, all it takes is those 1 or 2 outings back to back to get their confidence back up. I know that doesn't mean when you look at their stats on the big board and everything like that, like, oh, this guy still has a such and such ERA. That's fine. Whatever. Ignore that. If you take those last few starts, all it takes, like I said, those just couple good outings, those confident boosting outings, maybe they can turn it around. And I mean, hell, 5 of these games, they showed it so far, at least on the offensive side. So I think right now we're at that point where, like we've sit here and repeated over and over, it's just, boy, these next 10 games are big.
Yeah, and Matthew said it here a little bit earlier. He says they got hot at the right time, and it really does. It feels like last year. It's almost it's like that bad movie that you watched from a year ago. It's like you know the plot, you know how it's going to end, And obviously we don't know the full ending per se. Obviously, we don't know if they're gonna, crap down their leg when it's all said and done at the end of the day in order to, um, you know, piss away essentially their playoff chances in September like they did a year ago. But
Yeah.
I think when it's all said and done here, I kind of like this analogy from Scott. He says the first half is working. It's like working a 12-hour shift. The start was hot, and then
Yeah.
that hit that lull in the middle, and then they get the second win and close it out on fire. And it really that does kind of describe the first half for these Cubs because they were hot, right? 18-11, leading the division, and then they went into that egregious slump that sent them, to the
It felt
bottom
like
of
a
the standings in the
two-month
NL.
long slump.
Yeah, a gross slump to say the least. The only good thing going during the slump was the starting pitching, and then they come back out now and they stand where they are. They have a chance to be buyers. Matthew, sitting here in the comments chiming that they are buyers. They can be buyers. They absolutely can be buyers right
And it's
now.
crazy
Look at
saying
this
that
team,
as they sit dead last in the division. It's
and
crazy to
that's
say that, but it's
the beauty of baseball with
yeah.
the expanded playoff is all of a sudden everybody's got a shot and they're playing good ball at the right time. I mean, you look at it right now, like even the Cardinals, who are in a wild card position, are still 4.5 back of the Brewers.
Yeah,
Like
but
between the
I will say
Cardinals
with
and
the
the
Cardinals,
Cubs,
the Cardinals are getting hot too. It's one of those things.
sure,
We all knew it. Last year sucked for them too, but I think maybe in the back of our minds we all knew like this team, that Cardinals team, they're going to figure it out too, and it looks like they're kind of starting to figure things out too. So
yeah,
it could be an interesting second half. It could be a big battle royale. Who knows?
it sure could. Cardinals are 5-5 in their last 10. Actually, the two hottest teams right now in the division are the Pittsburgh Pirates and your Chicago Cubs, both 7-3 records in their last 10. Milwaukee Brewers actually the worst team in the division in their last 10. They're only 3-7 in
Oh
their last 10.
man,
So it's going to be wild. I mean, really, even the Cubs being 8.5 back, they're 3.5 out of the wild card. I
yep.
mean, being 8.5 back, they're only 4 games back of where the Cardinals sit. So it's going to be a ride down the stretch. Really, I mean, it's anybody's game right now. You got the Mets obviously in a playoff position, the Braves in a playoff position, the Diamondbacks and Padres and Giants are all clawing for it, and the entire NL Central as a whole
Yeah.
is clawing at this playoff race in order to try and get a piece of it when it's all said and done. But Tyler, let's get into some of this. I am in agreement with you that the first half was kind of that wild roller coaster ride, and I'm kind of happy it's over, and I'm hoping that it
Yep.
means greener pastures on the other side of things here for the Chicago
I'm
Cubs.
sorry. Oh, okay. You were going to ask me. No, you just brought it up. I was fixing to ask you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where we were
Yeah.
going. Who's your first half MVP for this team?
Okay, when you ask me this, are you meaning is MVP and Cy Young in the same category?
No, two different categories.
Okay, I didn't know if with you asking me, I didn't know if you were gonna. Okay, uh, as much as I want to say one guy's name that I feel like you may say, I've got to go Ian Happ. Ian Happ
Ooh.
has, I feel like he's been one of the main reasons during like this close to the end of this second half. Like he has came up as much, and I'll sit here and say it. I have beat the drum on Ian Happ not being a clutch player in the past. I've sit here and said it over and over and over. And I feel like he's had several big moments this season, game-changing moments that have like just changed the momentum of a game. He's hit home runs, go-ahead home runs. There's another guy that I feel like you're going to say, so I'm not going to say it. You may say him, that you could argue has been a better hitter than him. But as far as MVP, most valuable player to this team, not counting pitchers, not counting that at all, even though I get it, they only pitch every 5 days. I've got to go Ian Happ.
I love that pick. Honestly, I was leaning Ian Happ, and I think a large part of that being just because of the guy that he's been in that 5 hole is kind of that RBI guy right now for this team, the run producer. Everybody gave him shit that he doesn't slug and he doesn't do this and he doesn't do that. You could make the argument that he's been the best.
I'll say it. I'll say
Sure.
it. Yeah.
I think we all have at times, but he has been arguably the best slugger because coming up in those big moments with guys on base. And I think that's what has made him certainly a considerable candidate for the MVP. Juice says he's the MVP for beating the tornado. Glad everything's okay down there on the south side. It now sounds like the city's getting ready to get rocked. So I am on high alert and watch here myself at the current moment. Scott says that Michael Busch is the MVP. And I think for sake of the argument, Tyler, really when you look at this thing, there's only two players I think here that you can sit back and confidently call a potential MVP on this team. And the other name you have to put in the conversation is Michael Busch. He's been the most consistent player over the course of this first half. Really the only guy that has hovered around at or above an 800 OPS for the entire season. And he's just gotten hotter as the season's gone on. I mean, a guy that I think we largely sat here and said, as a podcast ourselves, I think as a fan base in general, that, this guy, he can't be the best bat. He can't do this. He can't do that. If this team's going to be something, that can't be your top guy. But why? Like Jed went out and got this guy and took a flyer on this guy who was blocked in another organization because he's a good baseball player. And now he's got an opportunity. He might blossom into a superstar. We don't know. That's the beauty of this thing. It's just like Moneyball. We got to get that Moneyball reference out of the way now here on the Cubs on Tap Show. It's like Moneyball. You don't know. I don't know. None of us know if these guys are going to develop into superstars or not. It's taking the chances and it's taking calculated risks. And so far, the calculated quote-unquote risk on Michael Busch has largely worked out for Jed and company here in the front office. So I'm right there with you. I think,
it makes me ask like that what could have been question, because I'm looking at it, I'm sure you are too. I'm looking at his stats right now. Like he's 357, 466. Wait, let me back it up a little bit. 271, 357, 466 slash line, 823 OPS. And it's like, as a rookie, you see that and you're like, and then you see these other guys in the lineup, like Hap's doing his thing, Hap's doing his thing. But like if it just makes you ask the what if Belly was hitting the ball, if Dansby was hitting the ball, if Sale was hitting the ball, if Morrell was hitting a little bit better, if PCA, it just makes you ask the what if question, just because you've got a rookie that we're sitting here talking about right now in the MVP conversation. So it's like, man, like if everybody else was going like, and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It
makes you wonder. It really does.
Yeah.
Juice, you jumped back in at the perfect time, buddy. Glad everything's okay on your end. I am actually going to pause and pop out for a second. I'll be on the back end producing and jump back in when the time is right. But Juice, would love to hear from you here, my man. What do you think and what are you feeling? Who is your first half MVP for this Cubs team?
To me, I think it's got to be Shota Imanaga. I look at Shota. They win when he takes the mound. They find a way to win, but he must account for close to 30% of their wins. Without Shota, imagine where this team is at.
That's exactly what we were just talking about. Yeah.
And
you're exactly right.
You can make the argument that, I love the Michael Busch pick. I think he's been so valuable. I think if you look at this team, like overall, and sorry, I'm like a little out of pace here. It's just weird. After we had all down here in the basement, and then just luckily everything's moved out. But
good deal.
Yeah, I think you can make the strong case for Shota, but I think it's hard to name an MVP on a team that has, for the most part, underachieved over the course of this first half of the season. Yeah, there's been some good performances. I think Ian Happ's another guy that you can name over the course of the last couple. But overall, they just haven't been good enough, in my opinion, to name an MVP for this team. But if I'm going to have to vote anybody, it's Shota. They just, like I said, they just win when he takes the ball. And like I said, imagine where they're at if there's no Shota Imanaga on this team. It's probably ugly.
Oh, for sure. Like, so when Ron asked that, the first thing I asked him was, I was like, okay, are you taking the MVP and the Cy Young as two separate ones?
Okay.
And he was like, yeah. But with that being said, with what you're saying, I mean, like, because just before you came on, we were talking about the first half and everything like that, and I asked the same question. It's like it's the question that we talked about all for that first month and a half of the season. It's like, where would this team be without Shota Imanaga? Because you had a Justin Steele that got hurt the very first day of the season. You didn't know what you had in Jameson. Assad was getting started. You didn't know what he was going to be yet, at least this season. And then everything else is kind of a question mark. But Shota was consistent, hovered around that 1 ERA. And it's like, if Shota comes in and gets lit up, who's to say this team isn't 8 games back from the wild card instead of 3.5? So, like, you could argue not only could he be the Cy Young or is the Cy Young of this team, but also the MVP. I said Hap just because I wanted to say, between as far as fielding, as far as guys in the lineup every day, I was thinking of Hap, Bush. But with Hap, it just felt like this season, and I said it earlier to Ron, I was like, I was beating on the drum about that guy has not been clutch. Yeah, he'll get his numbers, but like in those situations with guys on, runners in scoring position and all that, like just was irrelevant, absent. And it just felt like this season, especially close to the end of this first half, he was in a lot of situations where he hit a lot of game-changing, whether it was a game-changing home run, a game-changing, just a hit in general. It just seemed like, I don't know, something about this first half. He was in more spots to produce and show up in those clutch situations, and he did. So that's the only reason why I was saying Hap. But yeah,
I like it.
I can agree with Shota though too.
I just can't give it to Hap considering the fact that for much of the first couple months of the season, he was so just replacement level bad. But on the flip side, like I look at it as this way. If you look, and I got to give Jed some props, because if you look around the MLB and look at comparable players to Shota Imanaga that were free agents in this offseason, you're looking at guys like Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery. Like, those are names that we were linked to and talking about in depth here.
And look at them right now.
And they've been awful. So you look at what Jed made the right decision. I mean, I know that we can sit here and talk about all the bad things and mistakes and mishaps that Jed's made, but I don't know. And I don't want to like make this a whole like Jed Hoyer trash show or like Jed Hoyer, like sticking up for Jed Hoyer. But I look at it this way, like everybody is sitting here burying this guy. But if you look over the course of like what was available in terms of the free agent market, we can't know what was available in the trade market this year because we're not in those front offices and we don't know what names are thrown around. But there hasn't been a huge star that came out of free agency that's really performed. I mean, the only guy you could really say was the guy who just won the home run derby.
Yeah, that's the only guy I'm thinking too. Yeah,
which I mean, you could fault him for that, but you already had a crowded outfield. So
I don't think anybody
that was never an option.
Hernandez. Yeah,
I mean Chapman, but Chapman hasn't been very great either. I mean and this is when I like to educate some people too, like sitting around here. I love looking at wins above replacement. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. It helps evaluate a player.
Oh, for sure.
But it's still flawed.
I agree. It doesn't tell you everything.
It doesn't. And if you're a good defender like he is, you're gonna really rack some WAR, which is it's fine. And you could use it to evaluate your baseball team. I like to say it as this: it can't be the stat; it can be a stat within the conglomerate of making decisions.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Because I look at a baseball team like this: stack your team with as many 3, 4, 5 win players as you can, with all different shapes and sizes. Meaning, if you're a 3-win player but you hit 30 to 40 home runs, that's valuable.
Yeah.
Or if you're Matt Chapman and you're a 5-win player and you play good defense, or you're like Dansby Swanson, right? Like. You're good defensively. You're going to rack up that WAR that way, and you're going to contribute somewhat within, the landscape of the offense. But we can't sit here and say like Chapman's been a good signing for them, in my opinion. I don't think so, but
I agree.
And I think for the most part, there's been a lot of Jed Dragon, but I mean, first half MVP showed it to me, and that's why like I think he needs to get his flowers for this one because there's a lot of mistakes that could have happened.
Oh yeah, for sure. And going back to your Chapman point for a second, like I like when you go on about something because then like in my head, like it pops up questions that like, and it just makes me want to ask, like with Chapman, it's like, does Chapman, even with Chapman on this team right now, you replace him with Morrell, is this team any better? I mean, I get it, he's better defensively, but as far as is their record in the standings, is it any better?
I don't think they lose baseball games because of defense as much as they lose baseball games because of bad base running and lack of timely hitting, which Matt Chapman doesn't help in those realms.
No,
he doesn't. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not sitting here and saying that Christopher Morel is great at third defensively. He's not.
No, but
he's replacement level. I don't think he's been under replacement level. But I mean, if you told me he played the position like this for this year, but his offensive production was a lot better, I think we're overlooking a lot of the defensive spots.
Oh, for sure. Just plug in Aramis Ramirez.
Yeah. Like to me, Morel, the route for Morel being good is just be replacement level defense and hit 30 home runs. Now I would like to see him put more bat on the ball and work more gaps.
Yeah.
But I get it. Like he's still, what is he, 24? He's still young.
I think so. Yeah.
Still very young, so I mean, there's a lot of back and forth we can go with, but I don't know. I sit here and I hope I don't know if you share the same opinion, but you can evaluate why Jed didn't make this team better and then go look at the free agent market and not see that there's a lot of bad money out there that was dished out over the course of this year. Like there's a very limited amount of moves that were going the right way for good money.
I mean, there was there was Ohtani,
which was never going to happen.
Wasn't going to happen. And then other than that, you had, I know they danced Juan Soto around the trade market and he ended up going to New York. Other than that, yeah, I agree. I mean, there really wasn't, and somebody's probably sitting there screaming somebody's names that, I'm blanking on, but like there really wasn't anybody else. And I'm glad you brought up Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery because hell, those two guys, like I want to say Blake Snell even admitted like, man, I wish, I mean, you could argue all these Scott Boras clients that signed, even Cody Bellinger, you could argue all of them, like really hasn't panned out so far. So yeah, it's easy to sit there and bang on the, blow the whistle at Jed. And we've all done it, but like it would have been easy for anybody here to blow the whistle this offseason. But to your point, there really wasn't past that one golden goose, that unicorn. Yeah, there really wasn't a whole lot on the market that was going to make a humongous difference on this team.
I think the only knocks that you can give to Jed, with knowing what we know now, without knowing the trade market, mind you, like that's got to be a huge stipulation in this, is via the bullpen. Like, how totally. And I know, like, not your favorite guy, not my favorite guy, but Kenley Jansen would look pretty solid within this bullpen.
And he's having, I mean, there's been people that's argued that he should be an all-star.
Yeah, I mean, there's 4 or 5 names I'm blanking on right now that, we could have found to be.
Oh, your guy. Who was the guy you were the only guy I could hear. Was he
Robert Stevenson
from Tampa?
No.
Was he a Tampa guy? There was somebody, man, you were the only guy I knew that was talking about this person and like was just hell bent on this is who this bullpen needs.
The guy that was it the Phillies just traded for? Hunter Harvey. He went somewhere a couple days ago.
Hunter Harvey from Washington.
I've been looking for him in a Cub uni for a long time.
There was somebody this offseason I know we'll probably think about it when we're off.
I mean, I need to go back and listen to those too, because
Yeah.
I remember sitting and harping on guys, and
I want to say like he was whoever this guy was, and I'm like I said, we're gonna permit like he was one of your 3 guys. I remember when we always asked the question like in the winter shows as far as like 3 realistic moves that you want this team to do, or 3 moves in general, and he was one of your guys as far as signing this person. I can not thinking who it was. I feel like he was a former Tampa Bay Ray too for some reason.
That's why I think it's Robert. It's Robert Stevenson, but he got hurt.
Gotcha.
He got hurt. Let's see. Hold on 1 second. I think he threw like in spring training and then done for the year with it. Elbow surgery. So
Gotcha.
Done for the year. But imagine if you have a guy like that. You know, I mean,
yeah.
We talked at nauseum about some of these guys they could have went out and got.
Oh yeah.
JD Martinez, could see it. It's a name that maybe
he would have been nice. He would have been nice, especially for these younger hitters like PCA, Morrell. Imagine, and I was one of the guys that said it this offseason, like imagine a JD Martinez in that clubhouse talking to your guys about hitting, talking to even talking to a Dansby, who's barely hitting 200 right now, talking to Cody Bellinger and all those guys. I feel like he would have been huge, but hey, you know, it is what it is now.
Yeah, just a little update. Ron lost his internet. So he will be probably not with it. Maybe he gets it back up and we keep going. But I don't know how he does these little bubbles.
Yeah, he had other bubbles. I feel like
he doesn't teach me how to do the bubbles. But let me see if I can find the bubbles.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find the bubbles.
I feel like I'm assuming that after his first half MVP was probably going to be like, I don't know, first half, whatever the opposite of MVP was, your first half disappointment.
Yeah, let's just. Oh, here we go. I found them.
Okay.
All right. So we did first half MVP. Did you guys do first half Cy Young?
No.
Okay.
First I feel like that one's an easy
Cy
one.
Young. And I think we talked a lot about Shota Imanaga.
Yeah.
And I
it's got to be Shota. That's an easy one. Yeah.
So we'll just skip that one because we just kind of glossed over Shota
your all-star.
Shota. I like this one. First half, most improved. What do you think?
First half, most improved. Oh, okay. I got it. Jameson Taillon. He was a guy last season. Again, another guy. I was sitting here. I kept saying it over and over. Like I just didn't like it. I was just, man, big time disappointment. I know he had a little stretch there close to the end and all that kind of stuff. But this season, the guy has completely turned around. I'm going to say it right now. If this team actually does decide to be sellers, you know, let's say these next 10 games, they go 2-8, they go 3-7. Hell, God forbid they go 0-10. But I feel like, and I talked to you guys about it. If this team does decide to sell, I think he's a guy you have to dance around with because, I mean, this may be the best stretch of pitching that we see with Jameson Taillon. It's a great stretch. I want to say, what is he like at 2? He's under a 3 ERA, right?
He might be. Let me look that up.
It's really close to either right at 3 or maybe less. But yeah, he's a guy that you'd be crazy not to dance around the idea because you've got teams like the Orioles that need a starter. You've got teams like the Dodgers that need a starter. You got a team like the Braves that could use another starter. And so many teams like the Orioles and the Dodgers that you know, they always talk about those teams having the great prospects and the farm systems and everything like that. He's a guy you dance around with if this team decides to become sellers. But yeah, first half most improved definitely has got to be Jameson Taillon.
Yeah, 3.10 ERA for
3.10. Okay, that last start then, yeah.
1.16 WHIP and a 7.4 record, which I mean. He's doing all of this with somewhat of he had the injury, you know, I mean, imagine how his season looks if he doesn't get injured and he stacks up more wins and has a 3.10. Maybe we're talking about him being an all-star.
Maybe, especially because I want to say he missed that first month. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks playing because I get it. Yeah, Tyler, every team can do that, but it's just I don't care about every team. It's just this team. It sucks playing that what if thing, that what if game. But yeah, what if Jameson was healthy for that first month, and like you said, we could be talking about Jameson being all-star too.
We could. Good comment from Scott, I think. Professor only given up 3 runs since June 1st if you take out the Milwaukee start. Kyle, I want to navigate this carefully because I do love Kyle Hendricks and everything, but I still he takes the ball and it's still the results are good, but it still doesn't look good. Does that make sense?
Oh, I agree. I'll say I'll even one up you a little bit, but I totally agree. If this team is going to be competitive in that second half, I don't think Kyle Hendricks is in your rotation. He doesn't need to be in this rotation.
Yeah, and two, I mean, so many injuries have happened over the course of this year too, with the injury, with injury bug to the starters, that there's a good chance that he's not even getting the chance to do this if there's not like a Ben Brown injury or
Ben Brown, Jordan Wicks. Justin Steele goes down for a while. Jameson's gone for a while. Like, you got 4 guys right there. I'm probably naming on somebody else. Like, if those 4 guys don't
Javier Assad for a little bit.
Javier Assad. You got 5 guys that
so literally all of them except for Shota.
Yeah.
Have not taken the ball.
You take out all that, and Kyle might not even be on this roster right now.
Yeah, remember all that talk about if he got to whatever that date was?
Yeah, the Saturday game. That's Saturday. It was a Saturday because I think you said it, Juice. You were like, because we were sitting here screaming. I think I blew you guys up in our chat. I was just like, why is this guy still out here? And I think you said it. You're like, I think this Saturday it's his 10 years. Yada yada. Yeah.
Yeah,
so I think you can even argue that, thanks to that, yeah, he may not even be on this roster if those things don't happen.
First half most improved is so difficult for me because I wish this question meant what I think's gonna happen.
Yeah,
because I truly think we're seeing Pete Crow Armstrong get comfortable almost a little bit now.
I really hope so.
I
really do.
My prediction is that in the second half we see some good flashes from Pete, and obviously with a young baseball player, you're going to see a lot of bad, and then you're going to see a lot of good. It's going to be a lot of up and down. But I really loved the way he, attacked his bats in that last game. Obviously hitting 2 home runs, but being somewhat aggressive, but being selective, I think is something that we've kind of talked about on the show. And me being a guy who watched him down in South Bend, he's struggled with that his whole minor league career too, with pitch selection, what to swing at, what not to swing at. But I think he's kind of learning on the run. So, but first half most improved. Yeah, JMO's probably my answer. I don't think I can go anywhere else because I'm going up and down the roster, and
I was about to say it's hard to find anybody else that's actually doing all right so far.
I mean,
that you could say improved.
Yeah, and that's why this team is under 500. That's why they're struggling. We don't know if they're going to be, buyers or sellers. A lot of it's going to depend on the next. But Ron is back.
Back in the building.
I'm
after
back.
The power goes out.
I also survived.
Yes, we are 2 tornado survivors.
We're doing okay. I was listening along as much as I could until the internet decided to give out on me. I'll quickly chime in. My Cy Young, I have to give it to Shota. Yeah. I didn't get to hear your guys' arguments. I think because of
it was quick, but
being healthy the whole time, right? I mean, that was critically important. Being what he was for the whole duration of the year. I think then on the most improved too. I tend to agree with you guys, right? Like, outside of Jameson Tyone, who do you identify as a most improved guy right now? Like, even guys like Mark Leiter Jr., you can argue regressed ever so slightly.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a lot of
maybe Assad, but Assad was good last year too.
maybe, but even like Assad was incredible last season as well. I mean, it's really really tough to find a guy you know who's somebody I would have loved to have given it to if he was healthy for most of the season was Jordan Wicks.
Yeah,
would have been a guy that I
Been a
would have
good one.
loved to have been able to sit there and
Yeah,
say
been a
he was
good one.
most improved because he's looked really good when he's actually pitched. It's the problem is he hasn't pitched much so far in the course of the 2024 season. So I tend to agree with you guys. I think James Tyons had
and Ron, that kind of shook my brain a little bit. I think a case be made for Ben Brown minus the neck injury.
yeah.
You know, from
Yeah.
what we've seen, you know, I mean, obviously he wasn't here last year, but you know, we pay attention to the minor leagues pretty often. I think he's shown a lot of improvement. I think he's learning kind of on the fly, but there's just not, and that's what we were saying. That's why they're under 500 because you need to have guys who are constantly improving. I mean, Michael Busch. Could we go Michael Busch most improved, considering he got a cup of tea in the major leagues with the Dodgers?
You could make the argument for it because wasn't one of his knocks with he couldn't take walks and he miss at everything and he was all or nothing and he's very much transformed himself into what I would consider
you could say with Bush, you could even say most improved, like I guess throughout the season, because he did have a stretch. He did have a couple, like he had a slow stretch there that we were sitting here talking. Man, like I want to say, me and you looked at each other one night at one of the games, and we are just like, God, when's the last time this? It felt like he had that.
It was after the walk off, yeah.
And then after that walk off, he just it was either before or after that he just had disappeared, and then maybe it was before that walk off, and then he turned it on. So I guess maybe you could argue that too.
It was gonna be Yency Almonte, but then things happened.
Then shoulder surgery unfortunately derailed that one. But no, good stuff, gentlemen. We'll keep this thing moving here. A favorite all-star moment, memory, or activity for you guys. This one's a little fun. This one can be a little off the board. I think for me, probably, quite honestly, I'll age and date myself a little bit. Like I don't remember the 0-2 home run derby as much as I wish I could say it. So for me, one of my favorite probably all-star memories for the Cubs is Bryant going yard off of Sale in the all-star game. I think that is all-timer. That 16 team obviously having the full infield starting, only one of the second team in Major League history to do so in an all-star game. Tons of representatives from that team, obviously. Incredible stuff. The home run derby, it was cool and it's been okay. And I don't think this year's was that great. I know Teoscar Hernandez won it thanks to our comment section here. But it feels like even that has lost a little bit of the luster. So I think for me, the All-Star game itself, it's probably the KB. The KB for me is probably one of the big ones up there for myself. But I would love to hear from the two of you and what you guys have to say.
So let's go back to 2002. I was a very young juice, and I played baseball, and I went to camp at Stokely Field in Indianapolis. And over the course of the week, we did, camp drills and things like that, and you stay overnight. But the Midsummer Classic was during that week. So one of the nights that we had was they put up the big screen. They had popcorn and treats and, stuff. And we all watched the Midsummer Classic together. And the whole idea was, the game will be, over in 9 innings and, they'll go on. But that's the one that tied. So I remember sitting and watching in 2002, the
Milwaukee
tie and being like, holy shit. I'd never thought I'd ever watch an all-star game tie. You think you'd see at least the NL or the AL win. But they ran out of pitchers, and I remember being told to go to bed back to our campsite. But yeah, that was fun. I did a whole baseball camp where I was there for a whole week and went with some of my teammates from Little League when I had played. It was a really fun experience, and I remember a lot from that camp. But I remember eating tons of popcorn, got sick to my stomach after, and watching the Midsummer Classic with some of my teammates was a lot of fun.
I love that. Incredible. Tyler?
Oh, dude, like the home run derby for me, it's kind of like what we talked at the beginning of the show, just because like the home run derby was always around my birthday. And yeah, like I remember the '02. As far as the All-Star game, I just like you, Juice. I remember staying up late. Well, I was at my friend's house. So basically, what we'd always do is during that afternoon, like me, my neighbor, my brother, we'd always go out. We played baseball like every single day. We had our own rules in our front yard. I was at my mom and dad's house the other night for the what was it? We had a cookout or something. And I'm standing out in our yard just looking at our field and like where everything, we hit it past these trees. It was a home run. This house was a foul and all that. And I was just looking at it all like, man, my God, this is just crazy. But like, so we'd always have like our own home run derby before the home run derby. And then we'd come in. I vaguely remember 99 at Fenway with Griffey winning. I think Griffey beat McGuire. And then 2000, I remember the 2000 one in Atlanta.
Yeah.
But '02 was the one and the thing was Sammy lost in '02, but like I remember '02 to like just like it was yesterday, like him having the hat on backwards. And my best friend was a Yankees fan, so he's a big, he's rooting for Giambi, I'm rooting for Sosa. And man, that one was awesome. I love that moment. I love that same thing, that same game. As far as a moment that people forget about in that '02 tie was the Torrey Hunter robbing Barry Bonds.
Yes.
If you haven't seen it, go back and watch. It was awesome. And then '04, like, and little plug, when I wrote my article on Sosa's Derby history, like once I watched the '04 Derby, I remember that one like it was yesterday. Sosa, and like I don't think he made it past the first round, but that one you could argue that Derby was one of the most stacked derbies. You had Sosa, Bonds, A-Rod. There was one other person that my mind's gone blank, and I'm going to remember it here. And like,
You mean back when like all the true superstars?
Yes,
actually
back when all the true
participated in
superstars. And so it kind of like, and we don't have to turn into this big Homer Derby, discussion and all that kind of stuff. But like watching this one I agree with you, Ron. I think this one will go down as one of like the least ones we remember. The past few have been good, but I don't know. Watching the Sosa stuff, going back just and watching all that kind of stuff, and watching, I don't know. I was on the fence about not changing the rules back to the 10 outs, but man, I don't know. The 10 outs, watching it was awesome watching guys watch 500, smash 500 plus home runs, and Chris Berman just like drooling all over it. I mean, that was awesome. So, yeah, just every home run derby, it's just a reminder of, it just reminds me of my childhood, man, playing baseball with my friends and my brother, and just, and my birthday. So there's all that.
It's funny you mentioned that Torrey Hunter robbing, because I remember going to the practice field the next day after the game, and all of us were trying to recreate that moment, like out in center field, like robbing the home run, like. And I remember like clear as day. And then
somebody running out there and picking him up on his shoulder.
Yeah, well, luckily we had so
Patrick Swayze,
my coach, the camp coach. Yeah, but I mean, it's funny how like when people talk about things like that, like it jostles the memory.
Yeah.
And like Tyler, like when you said that, I was like, I forgot that we did that. We ran out to center field and everybody tried to time the Torrey Hunter, Robin, Barry Bonds, and everybody tried to redo it. And some of us were better than others. I'll say that.
Okay. And also another memory real quick. It also reminds me of the 2018 Home Run Derby when Bryce Harper and his daddy cheated to beat Kyle Schwarber in the Derby.
They did. The clock was at 0.
Yeah, the clock was at 0, Mr. Harper. Not Bryce. I'm talking to your dad, the one that threw the balls when he wasn't supposed to. I'm over it. I'm over it.
Wait, too, Tyler, just quickly going back to your point here about the Derby. Because, like, I think back, for me, one of the greatest derbies that I can remember watching is the Josh Hamilton Derby. Like, his performance in the Home Run Derby was next level. Like, that was insanity at that time. Because it was the new Yankee Stadium, and he was hitting baseballs into places that baseballs had never touched before.
Oh, yeah. And he didn't even win that Derby.
That's the craziest part. But like that's what everybody remembers, and I think to this day, there's places in that ballpark that home run balls have not touched since that derby. Like,
Sure.
and that was what 2008,
Yeah, I believe it was
2007,
I believe it was
2008. So almost 15 years ago.
Yeah,
No, more than that.
2008,
Yeah,
16,
16 years ago.
16 years ago.
So I mean, the fact that like that's what I remember. So
Yeah.
there are some really historically good.
Well, it's the best. It's
Fun
the
to watch.
best all-star event out of all the sports.
The
It
Derby.
is. Yeah, I believe it is.
Yeah,
I think it blows the dunk contest out of the water. I think it blows. I mean, I think the football. I forget what at the end of the
no,
season.
the football one is dumb.
That's a joke. But yeah, I think the home run derby it's the best all-star event in all sports.
Yeah,
I tend to agree because I think the dunk competition in NBA All-Star Game is not what it used to be either.
Those '80s dunk competitions though were.
It's not.
I
mean, maybe even if you had yours like
even some of the more recent ones, like the Levine Aaron Gordon dunk contest was like the peak of dunk contests, and there's never been a good one since.
All these guys have the same. All these leagues have the same problem. We just talked about it earlier. The stars don't want to do it anymore.
Right?
They do not.
You got the G League guys doing,
which is another reason why I'm kind of on the fence about going back to the 10 outs and all that kind of stuff, because maybe we get more guys to come in, because it's like you're basically going out there taking BP instead of throwing a clock on you, but maybe put some rules in there, like you only get so many takes or something like that. I don't know, but it'd be nice to, like I said, in the past few seasons, it's been like that. You've had Shohei, you've had Soto, you've had Vladdy. But yeah.
I will say just quickly, like, I feel like with the takes, though, it helped build the anticipation.
It does, but it also, like, the takes were, I get it, but at the same time, like, then there was times going back to you, Juice, talking about 02, like, it felt like it lasted 5 hours.
Yeah, it did.
For sure.
It felt like you would go to bed. It'd be almost midnight. You're like, my God, they're still going. And I get it. Like, it doesn't help when Josh Hamilton hits, 55 bombs in his first round.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the moral of the story is let's just get them all back on steroids, because it was awesome to watch those guys hit the ball in places that don't exist anymore. But
yeah,
I don't know. The All-Star game in a little bit of my 2 cents has lost a little bit of its luster. I don't think it's as important and as much CTV as it used to be. And I hated the fact that they used to decide who was hosting the World Series. I didn't think it made a lot of sense, but you can't lie and say that like it hasn't been. It was a better product when it meant something.
Right, because it actually helped determine something. And you can make the argument that it actually helped the Cubs in 16 because you had Kyle Schwarber could DH for 4 in the second game. Mm-hmm. So, like, it kind of worked out in their favor with the AL winning the All-Star game that year. But I agree, Juice. I think it's a hard balance of, like, well, it's a product that's meant to be for the fans, right? Like, that's what the All-Star game is. But how do you keep it competitive enough or exciting enough where like the fans actually want to watch it, actually want to tune in and be a kind of, a part of it in some way, shape, or form. So absolutely can completely agree with you guys there. Guys, let's turn the conversation here now. We've alluded to it throughout the show, obviously, but now is the time where we can really settle in and ask the question. Are the Cubs going to be buyers or are the Cubs going to be sellers? Because at the end of the day, I mean, coming out of this All-Star break, Tyler, you highlighted it perfectly. 10 games, 11 days, starting on Friday, July 19th. Like, this is the stretch run where this team either figures it the hell out or doesn't figure it the hell out, and something's going to be decided in a very, very quick order when it's all said and done. What is your thought? What do you think they're going to do? I'll open the floor to the two of you first. Share my own takes as well. Buyers or sellers? What are the Cubs doing here as we dwindle down on the rest of the month of July?
Both. Do both.
Elaborate.
Honestly, I think you go into this with the idea of most people are available. I'm willing to move a couple guys to reform this thing because I think that this lineup construction necessarily doesn't work. But I'm also looking at the controllable asset market and saying, if I can trade something I don't believe in and get back something of control, if it's not a starter, if it's not, a position player, a reliever that, will fortify my bullpen, I think you do it. And two, I also think too that they need to be smart about this and understand which guys need to go and which guys, don't need to stay. Because I think that there's some mistakes could easily be made here where you're trying to find this correct group and you end up trading the wrong piece.
He's coming back.
Sorry. Where did I cut out?
Trading a piece of blank.
where you're trading a piece that one part works. You don't want to trade the wrong part that is, a mainstay of this team where you're looking back and you're like, you shouldn't have traded this guy. This is what you need to do. You need to find which group from this front office is going to, work within the aggregate of what you want your team to be. I think what they need to do is go out and be aggressive in the controllable power market and or in the controllable starter market, and then sell some of these pieces that maybe bring you back some prospects that are close to the major leagues. So like if somebody comes to you and there's a 2025 prospect or a 2024 prospect and they want Cody Bellinger. Yes. And if he fits your style of play and he fits your team, absolutely. Jameson Taillon has been fantastic. Does the front office think that this is him? Or do you want to exit stage right and find that contract exit? Because now's the time to do it. There's a lot of, there's a lot of different places you can go with this whole thing and a lot of different routes, but I think at the end of the day, they should buy and they should sell. I think too, if they're going to buy, they should buy controllable places or pieces. And then maybe you do remember in 2015 when they bet on their pitching infrastructure and brought in Trevor Cahill and said, hey, go out there and maybe you do that a bit with the bullpen and try to find a guy that maybe he's like your Tyson Miller, right? Where he's just stuck behind a bunch of guys, but you believe in him and see how it works. And that's your reclamation project. But I think both should be on play. I don't think that I don't think this is a year, especially when you're they're 47 or 44 and 47. What are 47 and 50? I don't know, whatever they are.
47 and 51.
Yeah. I don't think this is when you're that record, you can't sit here and say you should definitively buy or you should definitively sell. There's in the next strand of 10 games may think it's going to push us that way, but if they go 5-5, you're in the same spot. It's the same conversation. So I think they should buy and sell, but they should do it with the thoughts of 2025 being their contention year, because they can add all this free agent capital if they can clear some of these bad contracts. So it should be let's get rid of the bad contracts. Let's add a guy that we think fits our mix, and then let's go spend like crazy in free agency.
Yeah, and Darren likes what you're putting down here. Juice is what Juice is saying 100, preferably a catcher with control is
Shane Langoliers.
Oh, yeah. Well, catcher for Oakland, right?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Sign me up.
Be a bad one. Yeah, Juice. I agree. I like what you said, and I know it's something I think I want to say one of the last episodes you were talking about, and I'm sitting there as I was listening to it, that makes a ton of sense. to kind of go on to that, let's say they do get to a point where they go 0-10 or 2-8. There is a world where they could still be buyers in the sense that, okay,
Yes.
maybe this team isn't going to compete for a wild card, but that doesn't mean that we can't add a player and I think you're in the same boat as me, like a Vladdy Guerrero, like a Vladimir Guerrero that is going to be there next year, and and do it smart. Like, I get it. Cody Bellinger only has 9 home runs right now. He's not performing to that $30 million contract. Dansby Swanson, same thing. I get it. He has a no trade clause. But Bellinger, for example, a guy that, let's say they don't trade him, for a fact that he's going to opt back into that contract. That's roughly what, $30 million next year, or like 28 or something like that. That's when the front office, Jed, you've got to ask yourself, okay, I get it. Cody's not performing. Maybe we can trade him. Maybe we cannot. I don't know. But is the return on a guy like a Cody Bellinger, is a return going to be something that in 2025 this team can do something with? Because if not, then can a Cody Bellinger in 2025, is a Cody Bellinger in 2025 better than anything else that you're going to be able to add, that you're going to be able to trade for in 2025? Is Bellinger better than that? Because if he is, then do you trade him? Do you hold on to him? I was sitting here the whole time. You guys, y'all know Jameson Taillon. He's a guy. But at the same time, if you're going to trade a guy like Jameson Taillon, which I've said he's a guy that they could trade, with that being said, Jed in the front office, you've got to be confident that, okay, is this the best version of Jameson we're going to get? And if they do decide to trade him, who's replacing him? Who's that guy that's good? Is it a Ben Brown? Is it a Jordan Wicks? Is Cade Horton ready? And if not, is there a better option out there next season? Maybe it's a Corbin Burns. Maybe Garrett Cole opts out. I don't know. Are you confident though that those guys are going to sign with this team? Are you confident that a guy like Juan Soto is going to want to come here? So you've got to factor all that in. And with that being said, even if this team does go 5-5, 0-10, 10-0, whatever, you've got to sit back and look like whatever moves they make. You can't just make a move to, okay, we're cleaning house. We're getting rid of Cody. We're going to dance around Ian Happ. Does Ian Happ want to waive his no trade clause? And are we going to throw Michael Bush in a trade if that means we get somebody that, like a Vladdy or anybody like that? They've really got to balance and look at the pros and cons of everything, and just, is that going to make this team better for 2025 if they're not good this year? Because the last thing you want is for this team to go 0-10, they sell off, and then 2025 we're sitting here like in the preseason show looking at this roster, looking at paper, and you've got freaking Patrick Wisdom at first base and whoever else, throw in Tweedledee Fart Knocker at, wherever. And it's like, okay, what are we doing?
And to add to that, Tyler, you know what good players want to do? They want to play with other good players.
Yeah.
So if you go out and you make a trade for, and I'm not saying it has to be Vladdy, but you go out and you get a controllable young asset with power.
Yeah.
What is it going to announce to that whole trade, or that whole free agent market?
Exactly. And
it's going to announce that the Cubs are going for it.
For
and
sure.
They're ready to go.
And if they don't,
it gets quick. That's how it gets back quick.
And if they don't, and they clean house, I think one of you guys told me this when I was talking about trading off like an Ian Happ or a Dansby or whoever. It's like, what does that say to Juan Soto? A guy that we're all screaming for to come here. What does that say? Like, what the F is this team doing? Because I can stay in New York. I can go to LA and make the same amount of money that Chicago is going to offer me and be in a better spot. So yeah, these moves aren't only going to, you guys know it. Everybody knows it. These moves aren't only just going to affect like the rest of the season. This off season could affect the next 4 or 5 seasons because, past Juan Soto and a few other guys next free agency, there's really not much on the horizon as far as the free agent market.
100%. Hashtag crack 'em to a birthday crack 'em at that as well, Tyler. Enjoy that beautiful cold beverage. I'm going to just add on to what you guys have to say because I love the direction. I think that's a perfect case scenario of what the Cubs could do at the trade deadline. I think there is a world where you can be buyers and sellers in the same way, improve your ball club for the long haul, maybe get rid of some of these players that you maybe have, quote unquote, like you said, kind of lost faith in or lost, hope in going forward here in the near future. I think the one thing, and this is purely me playing devil's advocate here, but do we think Jed Hoyer is capable of pulling off some shit like this? Like that is the first question I ask myself here, because it's going to take some suave type moves in order to pull that off, right? Especially if they're moving out of a Bellinger type contract, if they're moving out of some of these other guys that they've lost faith with on the roster, and then going out and trying to flip that around and make a move because Matthew. I think Matthew speaks for a lot of the fan base here. A lot of people are chiming for a closer. Well, the closers that are available are under control for 4, 5, 6 years. Are you really going to part ways with some of your best prospect capital just to get a closer, a guy that pitches one inning? Because I'll be honest, I'm sitting here right now. There was a comment here a little bit earlier, and I'll see if I can find it if I have it here. But it was about, well, there's so many guys coming back. And it's like, yeah, Julian Merriweather could be your closer down the second half of this season. Caleb Killian could be your closer down the second half of this season. The way those two have been pitching in their rehab assignments, you get those two back into this bullpen. This bullpen's been really good too, Tyler. I told you the stat as well, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they're since the beginning of July, they're like the third best bullpen in baseball in ERA, and since the beginning of June,
I would not have thought that
they're the sixth best ERA in baseball. So like. The bullpen's coming around. They're kind of starting to figure shit out. It took a while to get it going, but they've gotten it there. Who knows? Who knows what the hell happens down the stretch here? And
let me play devil's advocate, though, to your devil's advocate.
Please do.
Okay. Is there a world? I'll ask you both because I've said it to people. Is there a world, though, where you could see, no matter what happens in these next 10 games, that Jed is like, you know what? Okay. We're going to stand packed. The division or the National League's pretty whack right now. We're going to be getting a lot of guys back. So it's going to be like we're getting addition without having to do anything. And so is there a world where you guys see, let's say they do go 5-5, that he just is like, we're going to get a Bellinger back pretty soon from his finger. We're going to get these bullpen pieces back. We're going to get a Ben Brown back. And we think that'll take the pressure off guys like Wes Nesky, who's having to, bounce from bullpen to being a starter and stuff like that. Is there a world where you guys would be surprised if like no moves are made and his reasoning is we're getting guys back anyways?
No, because, and I don't necessarily think that would be a bad outcome. Because if you look at what they would be able to do in the offseason, it would still allow them to reset because they're still going to have a good amount of payroll coming off of the books. Mm-hmm. What I'm essentially saying is if you feel like a Cody Bellinger is not a part of the next great Cubs playoff run team right now, then you got to trade him, mm-hmm. no matter what it's for. But the thing is maybe Jed does think that. Maybe Jed thinks I'm one very good power bat in the middle of this lineup from it taking off all the pressure of Ian Happ and Dansby Swanson and Cody Bellinger and some of those same guys that I talked about in the last show. It's like you can't have 5 different types of mayonnaise. But it's like, well, what if I bring in, what if I bring in like some meat? You know what I mean? What if I bring in some? Then maybe it opens up to some different options to play around with your lineup. And two, I think it's short stated too about how well they've played, post like pre 7th inning. Like they are one of the best teams in baseball through 7 innings. And they've lost a lot of, I don't want to call them fluky games because they're still losses, but they've had a lot of bad baseball luck too over the course of this first half.
100%.
But then the flip side of it is I looked at the schedule. There's a lot of AL Central coming up, And you're looking at three teams that, I mean, they're not playing bad baseball. And that fourth team, too, in the Tigers, it's another fun team we were just talking about off air before we got on here. They got some pieces that could beat you. Yeah, they're not over 500, but they're not putting together their prototypical Detroit Tigers season. You know, there's some, you know, some light at the end of that tunnel. So you could look at this schedule and go, they squandered June because that was the time to make your move because they played so many teams under 500 that you look now at July and August, and it's like you're rolling uphill. You know, so I think it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing if they stood pat, because you're still going to have the same options that I'm talking about, you know, come the offseason of you still have the opportunity to trade Bellinger. You still have the opportunity to go out and spend like a crazy person and, you know, free agency. And two, if you don't trade Tyone and you truly believe that he's going to have this type of season next year, you know, then you're solving a problem of innings eating because he takes the ball when he's healthy and he's putting together quality starts for you. That's not necessarily a problem. So I think, like, you just need to identify which pieces are a part of this puzzle and which ones aren't and sell it, because why keep it? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing right now, Juice, just to piggyback off of what you had to say. I look at like the starting rotation. I know a lot of people are like, oh, they could use another starter. They could use another starter. The starting rotation has not been the fucking problem. Like this starting rotation has been fantastic, and they've been able to plug in 8 different guys into the starting rotation so far this year and get mostly the same results. Over
their number one prospect isn't here yet either. That's the other thing too. And
you're number one. You're number one in arguably number 1 and 2 and 3 prospects. Like, we could still make the same argument about Wicks and Brown are still largely prospects because we really haven't seen them pitch a whole lot at the major league level. So I think I agree with you there. Like, you know, if you're able to hang on to a guy like Tyone and he continues to do what he does, because guess what? He's pitching sub 3 ERA right now at $18 million a year. That's awesome.
Yeah.
310, regardless.
I know.
That's awesome.
We talked about in the beginning, or when the part of the show where you didn't have power. So I wanted to make sure that
I appreciate that. Right. But even then, with a 310 ERA at $18 million a year, guys that are pitching at a 310 ERA right now are going on the going market are going for Cody Bellinger plus money. That's a hell of a contract you're getting out of Jameson Tyone as a starter. So I largely agree there. I think Juice just started, articulate further as well about what you said a little bit earlier. If they were to stand pat, it says, hey, we think we got a team here that can make some noise down the stretch, but we are loading up and really going to readdress what part of me needs to be addressed in the off season because of the moves they can make, because of what they can change, et cetera, et cetera. A couple of comments here that I thought were really good ones. One coming from Mr. David Snyder here. Says Merriweather likely moves the closer if he comes back strong. He's got the stuff for the role. Brown might be that guy, but he's way off yet. Lopez, possible that he gets some heat. I mean, Lopez was an all-star closer with the freaking Orioles 2 years ago. I mean, this is a guy that's a really good ball player. The only reason he got let go by the Mets was the whole misunderstanding of all the nonsense. So he might be a guy that largely works out for the Cubs over the course of the season. He says Nair's not a type of closer guy. He's not a bad 7th, 8th inning guy, but just he doesn't have the type of stuff. Scott chimed in a little bit further. Said Talkman, Brown, Alzolay. I think Alzolay's done for the year from rumors and reports that I've heard. Belly, Killian, Wicks, Merriweather, Keegan, and Little all expected back by August 1st. That's assuming Little doesn't need any kind of Tommy John. But they're getting reinforcements, right? They're coming at the right time when it's all said and done. I mean, I think the biggest key here is there is a chance that they don't do a whole lot. I think they still make a couple of little moves regardless at the deadline in some way, shape, or form. But I think there's a world where they largely don't do a whole lot and say, hey, we're going to see what happens down the stretch, who proves to be that we see as a part of the future and who does. And then this offseason is the biggest offseason in Jed Hoyer's tenure as president of baseball operations because, Juice, like you articulated on the last show that we were all on together and had this discussion about, he's under contract only through the end of next season, and then he could be let go and they could turn this thing over to somebody else to go ahead and go out and make the decisions for this ball club going forward. So a lot really is just riding on the course of not only this trade deadline, but obviously the upcoming off season. So it's going to be exciting. Juice, I know you wanted to get to this. I think this is a thing that we need to get to as well. We are recording on Monday. There are 10 rounds still left in the MLB draft, but the Cubs did draft picks in rounds 1 through 10. At the end of the day, they take mostly position players, 8 position players over the course of this draft so far. 2 pitchers, those guys came in rounds, I believe it was 6 and 8, respectively. Cam Smith was the first overall selection for the Cubs at number 14. The third baseman, really, really cool story. I don't know if anybody saw it on Marquee after the fact. He got on with Cole Wright on Marquee Sports Network, and they discussed that his grandmother is who got him into baseball, and she's a big Cubs fan. And he was almost just as happy for her, if not happier for her, than he was for himself. Really cool moment. It's just something that really hit home for me as well. Juice, I mean, so far from what I've seen watching the draft now over the last 2 days, and watching what they've done and who they're taking, not only is it a lot of bats, obviously, but it's a lot of college bats. It's a lot of guys that are a lot further along in the development cycle. Guys will have a more likely chance of either A, becoming contributors on this Cubs team, or B, becoming maybe contributors on other ball clubs if they are used to kind of flip and flop and deals with in the near future. But they are improving positions that they were largely thin in over the course of the last few drafts. Obviously, a lot of pitcher heavy drafts over the last few seasons. And I know, Juice, you had a theory that you wanted to share on this. So I want to turn it over to you really quick, and then Tyler and I can chime in from there. But your thoughts so far in the first 10 rounds of the Cubs 2024 MLB draft class?
Yeah, it's a simple theory, and it's the fact that if you went through this class and watched them, I don't want to say that I watched 250 prospects. I didn't. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. But being the guy that does follow the draft pretty close, I try to follow college baseball as closely as I can. This draft was just so top heavy with pitching and not a lot of depth. There really, if you didn't get even the guys that were going to be picked between like 10, 13, 14, 15 were low, not low upside, but like really, really low floor, like real high risk. And I think that like just mitigating that risk and looking through, their draft class, it just shows that what they wanted to do was add position players because it was deep. It was a very deep position player draft. I liked what they did in the third round. I like Cruz a lot. I think he's really, really fast. He brings a different aspect of the game. It kind of goes back to my theory about baseball and Jed Hoyer and Theo Epstein in terms of, the game going more athletic, going more speed driven. I think he's going to be a decent player. And all of this is going to be about development. I really like the catcher they took, Ariel Armas.
I do as well. He
is a defensive like powerhouse. Like he could play the position. And I think the biggest problem within the system over the course of the last couple of years has been the fact that they've drafted catchers that we've been unsure if they could catch. Like that's been, Moises Ballesteros can hit. We don't know if he can play the position. We still don't. And he's sitting in AAA. Like that's a problem. Pablo Aliendo was converted, if I'm not mistaken, to catcher early on in his Cubs tenure. So finally they get a guy who's like, yeah, I'm a catcher. Like and they haven't had that in the system that they can count on in a long time. I mean, I can't even remember the last legitimate catching prospect that they drafted. I mean, let's face it. Wilson Contreras was not a catcher when he came into the system. They converted him into doing that. Now you're talking about a kid who, yeah, he's a catcher. He's been playing catcher for forever. That's his position. That's where he's going to be. And I like him a lot. I think he has a lot of upside. But then you talk about the first round pick, Smith, right? Yeah. I like if he can change his swing a little bit and add more slug, I think he'll be a very interesting player. And they don't have that. Like I said, again, it goes the same to catching. They don't really draft a guy that just is he plays third base. You know what I mean? That's realistically, like, you look at this team and they haven't done that. They've converted shortstops, they've converted second basemen, they've converted guys from the outfield and said, all right, start taking ground balls. But like, there is a little bit of a positive too. I know the timing of the position. There's no learning curve with that because I've played here forever. So that's, I think, looking at their class, I like what they did. We won't know much about it for a while here. Even college bats take some time to get their college arms. It's a different story. You can kind of run through. We've seen that with, Paul Skeens and a couple other guys that have come up and made initial impact. But yeah, I think it's I think overall we'll look at this class and we'll go, yeah, it was pretty average, but I think that there's some good pieces. Like, I don't think that the Cubs in this draft got like the guy, and I may be wrong. Like, who knows? But I think that they got a bunch of guys that are going to be solid contributors over the course of their careers, and or their trade bait. I mean, a lot of these guys we won't see anyway, but I like what they did over the draft. I was pleasantly surprised. I haven't graded it yet, but off the cuff, I mean, it's a B-, I think, given the fact that they were at 14. I think they took a good swing with a high upside player, and then they added a lot of speed, and they addressed a lot of organizational needs. And you can't fault them for that. I'll give it a B-, and hope my grade didn't make any sense come 3 years from now.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, like, as crazy as it's going to sound, your grade might not make any sense in 24 hours from now because there are still 10 rounds to this draft that have to be largely performed. Obviously, late round picks are largely crapshoots in any draft, especially in baseball. But Juice, I tend to agree with you. I like what they've done here because we've seen them go pitchers over the last handful of drafts and go pitcher heavy over the last handful of drafts. And, they invested a few, higher picks in some of these position players. Obviously, guys like Matt Shaw just a year ago in the first round. Plenty of other Passiola, who's down in Myrtle Beach right now. He was a third-round selection a year ago as well. They really committed to a lot of these guys that fill needs. They're continuing to do that, right? I mean, just today, 3 third basemen taken in this draft. And I know Cole Mathis, the second-round pick, a lot of scouts believe he's probably a first baseman when it's all said and done, despite the high upside arm. The Cubs drafted him, quote unquote, as a third baseman. And they took a third guy as well in the 10th round, Matt Halbach out of the UC San Diego. I think the biggest key here, too, to consider as well, only 2 high school players were taken by the Cubs in the first 10 rounds. 8 of their 10 picks, all college guys. Cam Smith is a college guy. Mathis is a college guy. Armis was a college guy. Galvin, who was their 6th round pick and their first pitcher off the board, college guy. Brethrow, I believe is how you say his last name. He was their 7th round guy, college guy. Alvarez, college guy. Capel, college guy. And then Halbeck, college guy. So tons and tons of college players here in this draft. Cruz, and I believe it's Southacene is how you say his last name. Number 1 overall player in Nevada. He was their 4th round pick, shortstop. A little undersized guy, but he hits like a son of a bitch. Those were their only 2 guys that they took that were high school players, and of course, both of them being bats. I agree with you, Juice. I really like the Armis pick. Just to quickly add on to that as well. He was semifinalist for the Buster Posey Award, which goes to the best catcher in Division I collegiate baseball. He was also an ABCA/Rawlings Gold Glove team member. So he was a Gold Glover essentially at the collegiate level as well. Really good catcher. And he had good offensive numbers as well. He was an 800-plus OPS player. In the season, 6 homers, 30 ribbies in 55 games, 40 runs scored as well, 303 average. The only reason I know those numbers is because we wrote up the reports over at OnTapSports.com today. He's a player I really like as well. And I think the guy that's the most intriguing part of this draft class, Juice, is the 7th rounder, Ivan Brethrow, because although he's really raw, he's got raw power. And that's a guy that a lot of people are like, if you can tap into his power, you can correct his swing maybe a little bit. He's a guy that can really, really find kind of his stride maybe as that corner outfielder who's going to slug for you. And everybody's looking for slug. One final thought, though, I saw And I saw this all over X as well, but when you look at the heights and weights of these guys, you tend to agree. I think Jed Hoyer's building the Bears an offensive line, and his shit
Yeah,
doesn't work
I
out
did
because
see that too.
6th round through 10th round picks are 6'3", 6'6", 6'4", 6'6", and 6'3". He's got a small offensive line on his hands when it's all said and done. Tyler, do you have any thoughts that you would like to add about the draft class? I see a yawn over there.
Wow, you're good, man.
The couple Bush Lights, but we want to get
Hey,
you.
congratulations to all those guys. It's an exciting time for all of them. Cam Smith, I watched him a little bit in Omaha. Going to be kind of exciting to see how he pans out. I know, like, a lot of people are saying like he could play third, but then a lot of people are saying that maybe he moves over to like first or something like that. But yeah, the fact, I mean, I guess it just goes to show the confidence that they have in their pitching right now to, not draft as many pitchers. But and I mean, how many shortstops are that? 2 or 3 shortstops did they draft? Probably 2 of them. The fact, drafting athletes because some of those guys may get danced around somewhere else. But yeah, it's exciting. I'm like, don't really know much about the rest of them, but and who knows? Maybe we see them soon. Maybe we end up trading them off for other pieces. I don't know, but no. Congratulations to all those guys. That's I mean, it's always cool. One day you're playing college, the next thing you're in the pros, man. So that's awesome.
Do you guys think that Judd drafted that way because he got sick and tired of watching Miles Mastrobuoni and Nick Madrigal on the big league team? He's like, screw it, I'm just gonna get a bunch of 6'4", like 240 guys in here
to play third base. Yeah, I mean, hell, 3 third basemen in 10 rounds is a very clear signal that you are trying to build up a position again, though, that I think we can all sit here and confidently look at each other and say was a thin position in terms of organizational depth.
Did you guys, speaking of the draft real quick, did you guys see the clip? There was a clip. I thought there was a clip of, it may not even be a clip, but it was on it was on draft day about the Rockies. I believe it was the Rockies that had drafted somebody and they were comparing him to a Chris Bryant, but like a healthy Chris Bryant. And it's like they have Chris Bryant
so dirty
on the team.
Doing him so dirty.
It was so Colorado. And then the other thing I remember from some of the draft videos was Tommy Tanks. Tommy Tanks getting drafted to Oakland, and it's like the look on his face. It was, I mean,
pure terror.
It was funny.
I was gonna say, I forgot what I was gonna say. I hate when that happens.
It's the worst.
What was it?
If it comes back to you, Juice, we'll come back to it. But one final thought, gentlemen. We are quickly approaching the 100-minute mark here on this show.
I love when that happens.
It's a good one. This show is always that kind of show. Again, this is going to hold us over here for at least a week. The next time that you'll probably hear from us will be after the next series, and that's where we want to take this conversation. Next up is the Arizona Diamondbacks. Play resumes for the Cubs on Friday, July 19th at the Friendly Confines. This is a 3-game set at Wrigley. It'll be the first of 6 consecutive games at Wrigley Field for the Cubs. They play 3 with the Diamondbacks and then 3 with the Brewers before heading to Kansas City, following an off day on July 25th, which is a Thursday. Plenty of lesser travel coming up as well, because after Kansas City, it's off to Cincinnati. So quick travel, not a lot of crazy stuff going on right now. An opportunity certainly for the Cubs, again, as we noted earlier, to get themselves into that buyer conversation here at the deadline rather than the opposite. Juice, you got that thought here really quick?
Yeah, really quick, just to go back to the draft before we start talking about the Diamondbacks. Does this draft now mean we can stop talking about Matt Shaw at third base?
It could. It certainly could.
Because he can't. I mean, we've talked about this. I don't think he can play the position. I think he's second baseman. That's just me. That's just my opinion. I've seen him play third. It's okay. It's not great. I don't think the arm's good enough. That's just. I think that this draft maybe kind of signals the fact of like maybe his position is going and his home is going to be second or short.
Yeah. I think that's very much a possibility, and I think that's a good thing because, in fairness to Matt Shaw, when he was drafted as a shortstop / second baseman. So he was not drafted as a third baseman by the Cubs. He was only penciled in as a third baseman by us, really, the armchair GMs as fans who are like, he can play third as soon as now, and it's like, clearly
gotta
not.
have an arm.
Yeah, it's a hard position. It's a hard position to play if you don't have that cannon over there at third base. But gentlemen, with the Diamondbacks on the radar again, this is a team that's also in that NL wild card hunt. They're a good baseball team. Obviously, we saw last year what happened down the stretch. They beat the Cubs in two very pivotal series between really the end of August and ultimately the end of the season, and beat the Cubs by just one game, getting into that final wild card spot. Obviously, went all the way to the World Series to lose to the Texas Rangers. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a great series, obviously, at Wrigley as well. You got not 3 day games. You have 2 day games and a night game. The Saturday game will be a night game at Wrigley because it is on Fox. So that is a national game. Gentlemen, thoughts, opinions? What are you looking out for with this upcoming Arizona Diamondbacks series at the end of the week once the Midsummer Classic is in the books here for 2024?
You've got to bring what you brought to the Baltimore series. I mean, you have to give Jed a reason for everybody to be shouting on their phones, "Hey, buy somebody." Whether he does or not, fine, but just like give them a reason. It's kind of like I want to say I heard it from a Boston guy one time. They were talking about this offseason as far as like this season and how how the season's going to go and stuff like that. And someone was like, I bet Alex Cora is probably in that clubhouse right now saying, "Hey, give our owner a reason to add somebody. Give Jed Hoyer a reason to add somebody." And that starts with Arizona. Arizona's, and like you said, Arizona's a team that man did not want to see them last season at all. You've got you've got Christian Walker, you've got Ketel Marte, 2 guys that you could probably argue that Ketel made the All-Star team, but Christian Walker should have made the All-Star team. You've got Gowan coming back. They're going to have their ace going. So yeah, you've got to treat this almost like a playoff game. You've got it, like we've said this whole podcast. These next 10 games are big. It starts with Friday, and you've got to bring what you brought to that Baltimore series. Got to.
Juice, anything you want to add?
I love what Tyler said there, and I think but I'm going to add to it. I'm going to go full Lovie Smith, Bears on tap here. We like to split our seasons into quarters, and this next 25% third quarter here is the most important. Like this stretch of games is we like the Cubs. We like the way they play when they play good. I'm trying to do my best Lovie Smith.
I like myself better when this team wins.
Rex is our quarterback.
You're right, Juice.
Don't bring that PTSD back to me.
This is the moment. It's almost like when we say this is the at-bat of the game. This is the 10 games of the season.
If they play well the rest of July and into August and flip this script to where they're playing the baseball that they played in that, like you said, that Orioles series, they can beat anybody in the league. And I think there was a comment earlier today, like the Dodgers don't have a healthy pitching staff right now. Yeah, they're probably going to add, but that costs. And who knows, you look at the Phillies just lost to Oakland, and baseball is weird. So it's, while I think the Phillies are maybe one of the favorites to win that division, that maybe they, find a way to, upset the Phillies. It could happen. Get into the dance and see where the cars lay. But I mean, nobody is bulletproof in this NL. So I mean, it's funny, man. Like play that whole series like you played in Baltimore and beat anybody in the league, but they gotta play clean baseball. I mean, that's what they did in the Baltimore series. They played clean baseball, and then they got timely hitting. So let's see if that works out over the course of this next week, and then we'll talk about the trade deadline.
Well said, gentlemen. I have nothing to add. The only things I'm going to add are some fun notes. One of them being in relation to the draft. Jed spent a lot of time out in California. It's what I'm hearing based on the draft, because in case you didn't know, or just the West Coast in general, because in case in Florida, 2 players getting drafted out of the state of Florida here by this Cubs team. 1, 2, 3, 4 collegiate players out of California. 1 out of the University of San Diego, 1 out of University California at San Diego, and then 2 out of University of California at Santa Barbara, and then of course the one Nevada player, as we mentioned, out of all places, Basic High School, is Ty Southasine. He was the number 111 prospect. They got him at pick number 120, and also Darren had an interesting suggestion for the All-Star game. He says he thinks they need a 999 live at home during the All-Star game. And he has way too much faith in me, assuming that I can just continue to eat 9 hot dogs, crush 9 beers on a regular given basis. But who knows? Maybe someday. Maybe not.
None of us could do it.
Hey, who knows? Who knows?
Also, if you were spending time out there in California, you should have taken that quick puddle jump over to Japan and scout Mr. Roki Sasaki more often than that. So let's hope that's the case.
There are reports that the Cubs have been out there and have been watching Mr. Sasaki. So
good. I hope that they're like
be the case.
I hope they're serving him grapes as he lays in his bed like this.
And just asking him how much money he wants in the signing bonus when they bring him over when it's all said and done. I am in agreement with you there, gentlemen. Before we sign this thing off, this has been a fun show, but I do want to remind everybody, of course, Cubs on Tap, as always, is one of 2 podcast that covers the Chicago Cubs here at the On Tap Sports Network. Check out our friends over at the Dingers podcast. They should be going live tomorrow, according to what my conversation was with Mitch today. So be sure to check them out right here on the On Tap Sports Net YouTube channel. They won't have as much interference with the fucking storms that we did tonight because it's supposed to actually be nice weather tomorrow. So thankfully, you'll be able to get a clean broadcast with them. We appreciate everybody sticking through here with the technical difficulties of just, again, weathering literally what was considered a Category 1 hurricane-like storm that just swept through the Chicagoland area over the course of the last couple of hours. As always, follow the Dinger Boys at Dinger Cubs on the socials. Follow us at Cubbies on Tap, Juice on Tap, Loose on Tap, Teddy Freddy 70. You know the drill. Joey knows nothing. Nick _ on Tap. Unfortunately, those 2 boys couldn't join us. Joey for family reasons, and we hope everything's good with Joey and his family. And then in Nick's case, he just didn't have power. The storms wiped him out. And he was unfortunately unable to join us here this evening. And again, at Silent Bob _ 2, you guys will be seeing Bobby Foster in the not so distant future here at Cubs on Tap. Bulls, Bears, Blackhawks. Bears training camp is literally starting this week. So Bears on Tap boys getting excited about that. And then the Blackhawks and Bulls are just in a waiting pattern until the seasons get started here as we quickly approach the end of August and into September. Be sure to follow us as well. And of course, Cubs fans, you have friends that like the Sox, and so do we. Send your friends to our friends. They can be friends over at Sox on Tap. Once again, ontapsportsnet.com and ontapsportsnet on the socials. The On Tap Sportsnet. Go and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Gentlemen, happy All-Star break to the 2 of you. We will be back in nearly a week following the Diamondback series. We'll talk all about that one, and we'll continue to preface what's going to happen over the course of the next games and what happens with the Cubs at the trade deadline. Again, it's 3 with the Diamondbacks, 3 with the Brewers, an off day, 3 with the Royals, and then 1 game with the Reds before the deadline hits on the 30th. That'll be game 2 of that Red series in Cincinnati. That'll be a 3-game set that they will finish on the last day of the month. Really, without further ado, gentlemen, what do you say? We get out of there the only way now? The Cubs on Tap?
Goodbye.
Boys, I'm gonna leave you with this. I'm gonna leave you with some inspiration. With some words of wisdom from my 34 years of being on Earth here. And maybe I'm kind of talking to the team too. Maybe I'm talking to everybody, fans, everybody. Just listen up. Don't ever think that you're a loser, that you are just, when you're down in the dumps, shit's hit the fan, and you just feel like an ultimate loser. Just know you're a winner in something. And you know what that is? I'll tell you. I just use myself for example. 34 years and 9 months ago, Ron Juice, there I was just hanging out in my father's ball sack. And that's when I heard the gun. And the race was on, and I was running, and I was swimming as fast as I could. Oh, you got it. He's coming around the corner. He can do it. He's getting there. And I won. I beat everyone else to my mother's egg. And then for 9 months, Ron, 9 months, Juice, there I was in the dark, in the caves, crawling. crawling until finally 9 months later, 34 years on this day, I crawled out. I crawled out of the womb with the slime, all of it on me, to crawl out and say, fuck the Cardinals.
Happy birthday, Tyler.
Happy birthday, Tyler. And let's go Cubbies.